Chapter 2. Executive Pastor equals COO of the Church. If Chapter 1 was about settling your identity, this chapter is about giving you language. Because one of the biggest challenges executive pastors face is not capability, it's clarity. You're doing the work, but you don't always have words for what you do. And when you lack language, expectations stay fuzzy. Authority feels uncertain. You hesitate to lead decisively. So let's bring this into the light. In the business world, there's a role called the Chief Operating Officer. The COO is responsible for turning vision into execution, building systems that scale, aligning people, processes, and priorities, making sure the organization actually works. Here's the simple truth. Functionally, that's what an executive pastor does in a church. Not symbolically, not philosophically, operationally. Now, before your guard goes up, stay with me. Calling the executive pastor the COO of the church does not mean ministry becomes corporate, faith becomes mechanical, or the church loses its soul. It means we stop pretending that complexity doesn't exist. It means we acknowledge that growth creates pressure, vision creates demand, people require structure to thrive, and someone must take responsibility for that reality. The senior pastor carries spiritual authority and directional vision. The executive pastor carries organizational authority and operational stewardship. Different callings, same mission. One casts the vision, the other builds the environment where that vision can live. Here's a helpful way to think about the partnership. The senior pastor asks, "Where is God leading us?" The executive pastor asks, "What must be true for us to follow faithfully?" That question alone defines your role. Because vision without execution becomes frustration, and execution without vision becomes maintenance. Your job is to hold those together. Let's get very practical. As the executive pastor, you are responsible for the how, not the why. You don't decide the mission. You decide how the mission is supported, sustained, and scaled. That includes staff structure, ministry alignment, operating rhythms, resource allocation, decision flow. You are the architect of how the church works. This is where many executive pastors struggle internally. Because you care deeply about people. You love the church. You feel the spiritual weight of leadership. And yet, your calendar fills with meetings, budgets, processes, policies, problems, and you wonder, how did ministry turn into this? Here's the reframe. This is ministry, just at the systems level. You pastor environments. You shepherd structures. You care for people by removing friction they don't have words for. Let me name something that often goes unspoken. Executive pastors often feel caught in the middle. You feel pressure from the senior pastor's vision, the staff's capacity, the volunteers' limits, the congregation's expectations, and because you're wired for responsibility, you absorb that pressure quietly. But here's the danger. If you don't clearly own the COO-like nature of your role, you'll either overstep into vision casting or understep in execution leadership. Both create confusion. Clarity protects relationships. So here's a defining statement I want you to internalize. The executive pastor owns execution. Not spiritually alone, not independently, but decisively. That means, you don't wait for permission to fix broken systems. You don't apologize for creating structure. You don't defer every decision upward. You steward trust by acting on it. Let's talk authority, because this is where many XPs hesitate. Authority in ministry is not about control. It's about responsibility. If you are responsible for outcomes, you must be empowered to shape inputs. That's not ego. That's stewardship. When authority is unclear, decisions stall. Staff grow anxious. Vision slows. Your role exists to increase speed without sacrificing care. Think of yourself as the church's operating system. You don't replace the mission. You make it runnable. When the operating system is healthy, leaders know what matters. Volunteers know what's expected. Staff know how decisions get made. When it's unhealthy, everything feels harder than it should. Conflict increases. Energy leaks everywhere. Your presence should reduce noise. Let me give you a simple filter you'll use again and again. Theology is the senior pastor. Direction is shared. Execution is the executive pastor. This keeps you aligned without competing. You don't decide what the church believes. You don't preach the vision every week. But you decide how fast we move, how clear roles are, how sustainable the pace becomes. That is enormous influence. One more important truth. When the executive pastor role is done well, the senior pastor looks better. Vision feels clearer, momentum feels smoother, culture feels healthier. That's not coincidence. That's alignment. So if you've ever felt unsure how to describe what you do, if you've ever downplayed your role to avoid sounding too corporate, if you've ever wondered whether structure belongs in the church, hear this. You are not importing business into ministry. You are applying wisdom to stewardship, and the church desperately needs that gift. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about what success actually looks like for an executive pastor, because if you measure your win incorrectly, you'll carry unnecessary guilt and pressure. But for now, let this settle. You are not filling a gap. You are fulfilling a calling. And that calling has a name. Let's keep going.